Hey guys, another reviewer here, and I'm here to speak to you about net neutrality. Ooh, yeah, this subject's just like herpes. It seems to come up every 6 months with no cure in sight. See, the thing is, first we need to get into what net neutrality is. Net neutrality is essentially a set of rules that, though they haven't been in law until 2015 during the Obama administration, they were actually being enforced by the Federal Communications Commission for about 20 years prior, which essentially guaranteed that our internet was open and free. It allowed us to access any kind of information available so long it was within the constraints of the law. The internet was classified as Title II, basically meaning that it was a common carrier or a dumb tube, that any information could be transmitted between those lines and they are not to be hindered, throttled, blocked, or in any other way hindered by the internet service providers that would give you access to said information. Which, that sounds all well and good. That sounds great, right? But there were times before net neutrality was actually put on the books as actual rules set into place, regulations, when companies like Madison River Communications, now this is what opened the floodgates, essentially, in 2004, they were throttling connections with Vonage. Vonage, which is a voice service over your internet connection, so you wouldn't have to pay for a phone line, you would just make your calls and things over your internet. And Madison River Communications saw this as competition because they also offered phone lines along with internet, so they throttled that service. And the FCC stepped in and sued them, so they were not able to do that. And then AT&T did the same thing against FaceTime, which is an app many of us have on our Apple devices. I have an iPad as well. And, they come with FaceTime, but you couldn't just use them. You had to pay for a premium package in order to use FaceTime, and that was not on. That wasn't something that the FCC allowed, so the FCC stepped in again. Then there was Comcast versus BitTorrent, where Comcast would throttle connections between BitTorrent sites, which is a service where mostly used for piracy. People would use it to download video games, movies, music, things of that nature. But the thing is, BitTorrent wasn't designed for that. Torrenting was not designed for that. Torrenting was designed as a way to share files between several computers quickly. Instead of downloading from one source, you downloaded packets from several sources and they would come together where they were being downloaded. And that was its essential source for things like open source software like Linux, or audio stems for when Nine Inch Nails released a bunch of their music as audio stems. It's for stuff like that. It's for file sharing, but in a way that's much more efficient and faster. Then there was another thing where Netflix was actually being attacked again, and this being attacked by Comcast. Netflix was attacked twice by two different providers. That's what I'm going to get at here. But Comcast was throttling Netflix, because Netflix wasn't paying them the premiums to open up the data transfer lines, things like that. So eventually Netflix paid the premium, and then all of a sudden the price for Netflix goes up. So that's kind of your first example of, this sort of thing happening, and then the customers having to pony up, So there's that. And then the other time I was talking about where Netflix was kind of throttled here was by Verizon. Both Netflix and YouTube were seeing slowdown because of Verizon. But see, they were trying to claim that they were trying a new video streaming package or system or something, and they were saying that they weren't doing it on purpose, which is good, because all these other things happened before these regulations were on the books. Verizon did it after, so they had to come out with the big excuses or they were in some big trouble. But, so you might ask yourself, the FCC has been pretty hard on this, up to the point where we had to make regulations to stop these companies from doing this, and the open free internet sounds pretty cool. So, who would want to hinder this great thing that we have? This great advancement that we can all communicate with each other with, and, share information and research and learn new things? Well, it's very simple. There's a man named Ajit Pai. He is the current commissioner of the FCC, and he's a former Verizon general counsel, so he's a lawyer for Verizon, one of the big three telecom companies that are lobbying for this. And he's deciding to say that because there was almost a $1 billion drop in the capital expenditure of these telecom companies between 2014 and 2015, when these Obama-era rules were being put into place, that it's actually not a good thing to have this regulated net neutrality. We don't want to have regulations on the internet. We want to have an open internet, but we also want to have it where there's no regulating force. Even though the FCC is supposed to be and have been the regulating force, but he wants to take a light touch approach, is what it's called. And he's also saying that because of these net neutrality rules, it is harder for smaller ISPs to verify that they are net neutrality compliant. I've seen a number once. I was trying to find articles on this. This information isn't really that hard to find, or isn't that easy to find, sorry. But I saw a number of $40,000 is what it costs for an ISP to verify, to get the paperwork. Now, I don't know if this is some sort of consulting firm or lawyer fees, or if they have to pay this to the FCC. I don't know. I couldn't find that information. I was searching around for it. But the actual numbers that I found and the actual truth of the matter is the 2014 to 2015 dip was actually about $500 million, not almost $1 billion. So the numbers were fudged there. And it was also the least significant drop since 2000. See, because in 2000, the capital expenditures for these telecoms companies came together to $120 billion. And then in 2003, they dropped down to under $60 billion, which is obviously the most drastic drop. But there was no regulations to blame then. So it just was a thing that happened. And then it was growing steadily until about 2008 to 2009 when the recession hit, so they lost about $5 billion. And then to the point with the $500 million drop between 2014 and 2015 when these Obama-era rules were put into place. I think the big thing we need to focus on here is Obama-era rules. See, Ajit Pai was made the chairman of the FCC by our current president. And we all know his motivations whenever it comes to this sort of thing. Don't really want to go too deeply into that. That's another rabbit hole that I will never talk about on this channel. But anyway, actually, I also saw the CapEx from 2015 to 2016, which is also another $2 billion drop, but that is still from a recovery from 2003, because at 2003 we were about $57 billion, and now we are at, I have it written down here, $76 billion. So it's not actually dropping as badly as anticipated, though we still need to see the numbers for this year. It's not actually over yet, but from what I can tell, there are two factors that go into the CapEx that we should consider. And a lot of the things I saw were that the drop between 2014 and 2015 should have been significantly larger. However, I only saw the specific numbers for the top 12 companies, and two of those top 12 companies, AT&T and Charter, I believe, dropped drastically by about $2 billion together. Or not together, but they were a large portion of a $2 billion drop, which meant the unlisted smaller ISPs, which, as you'll find out from what they're saying, are probably picking up the slack. And there are also some differences in how some companies are changing from a wired network to a wireless network for their broadband, which fudged the results a bit, because this is all physical broadband. You know, the CapEx is supposed to be the infrastructure of physical cables, physical lines, and it also accounts for vehicles, equipments, upgrades and maintaining, and things like that. Like, it's just money being spent on physical property that contributes to the infrastructure of the internet. So that's, that's what we have there for the numbers. But also, smaller ISPs have to go along with this. So I've read several accounts from smaller ISPs that say, having to pay to verify our net neutrality status sucks, but the benefits far outweigh the costs there. I mean, we've been upgrading at a crazy pace. Our customer base has been increasing because competition is good. The places where these smaller ISPs are, people want them. Because the thing is, where I am right now, and where 51% of the country is, their choice for cable internet is exactly Comcast. I have 3 choices for internet in my area. And this isn't even a guarantee that they service my address. They service my zip code, One is Comcast, and that's my cable provider. Then for DSL, we have Verizon, and then we have another company that's obviously not one of the big 12, one of the big guys. But the thing is, those two DSL companies are a tenth the speed. So there's not really much competition there. It's Comcast, or you don't do, Twitch streaming, online gaming's kind of hindered, things like, things I do. So I'm kind of pushed into going with Comcast. But let's talk about life without net neutrality for a second. That's kind of a big deal. See, because net neutrality makes it so that the internet is equal. You pay for your connection, you get access to everything. There's no question about it. There's no sectioning off things. But without net neutrality, that's exactly what could happen. You could have packages for video streaming services. So your Netflix, your Twitch streaming, your YouTube. And then you have your communication. You have like Skype. And this is voice communication. So you have your Skype, you have your Discord, you have your FaceTime, you have this sort of shit all in one package here. And then you have your text communication, which is like text messaging, emails. Like, I know text messaging is a phone plan thing, but this is just going off of a tiered list I saw from a mobile phone company. But it also can very well happen with telecom companies. You see, you have your music packages with Pandora and Spotify, and basically you're paying for the connection, and then you're paying on top. You're paying your basic connection, and then you're paying on top for these sites that you want to go quickly because you use them very often. Otherwise, your internet's going to be slow. And that's the whole thing. Like, you have your regular speeds that you should be getting from these sites that you're paying the extra for, and then you have like DSL, or hopefully not, but maybe dial-up speeds for all the rest. Which is an amount of frustration I don't think people remember. I do. The speed of which took hours to download anything. Holy shit. But yeah, we do not want this. We do not want slow lanes, is essentially what I'm saying. And then it gets even worse, where, how whenever I said that they weren't allowed to throttle or hinder in any way or limit or block things that you look at, all of that is out the window. They now get to choose what you see whenever you're using their service. So they get to choose what email service you use, what search engine you use, what news sites you can look at. Because these ones are going to be the ones that have priority because they're the ones that pay the ISP. I mean, suppose you're on Verizon. They own Yahoo, so guess what mail service or search engine you're fucking using? You're using Yahoo unless you pay a premium. Because those other services are going to be slow as shit or blocked. I mean, I highly doubt they're going to block competitive search engines. That seems a little far. But that's the thing. This is supposed to help small ISPs. But suppose you're already signed up with a bigger ISP and you want to shop for a different option. You're not going to be able to see those smaller ISPs because that shit is blocked. You're not going to be able to see news sites that offer information that may say things that your internet provider doesn't want you to see. Those sites are going to be blocked. And the one thing that's going to probably end up making a lot of money here is having social media packages. So now you got to pay a premium for that as well. So I don't really understand how this is supposed to be for ISPs, well, smaller ISPs anyway, or for consumers, or any sort of thing like that, whenever all it seems to be able to accomplish is taking away that agency from these ISPs and from people using their internet and stuff like that, paying for services that are basically just cut apart and served off in chunks, just like your cable television package. If there's a show you want to see on a certain channel, you got to make sure you have that package. You got to pay out your nose just to make sure you have those channels. It's fucking stupid. But yeah, that's where I sit on all that. So what can we really do about this? And that actually is fairly simple. That's a very fair question. And what you can do is contact your representatives. This vote is on December 14th of 2017, this year, which means you have about 2 weeks to contact your senators, contact your representatives, contact whoever you can. In fact, I'm going to put some information right here, right now, letting you know how to find your representatives and who to call. Because that is super important. We need to let them know that we want to keep net neutrality, we want to keep the internet the way it is, and we do not want to let Ajit Pai get away with whatever it is he's trying to get away with. there's speculation that he is doing this for Sinclair Broadcasting or something like that. I think it's Sinclair something. But apparently this company has been lobbying for this for a very long time, and he's finally doing it. So we are going to stop him, and we are going to basically tell him he's full of shit, because he is. Most everything he says is a lie to try to get this to pass when it's not. The things I've told you are things that I've researched, I've looked up. These are all, these are all based on fact, not based on what he says just to get his way. So with that, I want to say thank you for watching, and make sure you call your representatives, because that's really the only way we're going to preserve net neutrality, which is incredibly important. It's incredibly important to you. It's incredibly important to me, as proven by the fact that you've watched this video. If it weren't for net neutrality, you might not have been able to. You might not have had the ability to watch this video. I might not even have the ability to upload them anymore. Who really can tell? But anyway, I will thank you for watching, and I'm glad you made it this far, and goodbye.